It's Monday, excuse me, October the 11th, 2021. I hope that if you were able to gather together with your local church, that you had a wonderful time worshiping the Lord in music and listening to His Word. The last time that we were together, we left off with my dad deserting his wife and his children because of my mother's deepening emotional and mental and spiritual issues in her life. It created a dual environment, if you please, for my dad. He had to work two or three jobs because my mother only found release in spending money, which created more difficulties for my dad to have to pay the bills. But it also provided him a way of escape that he didn't have to spend a prolonged period of time with her or with the family. I don't think he was against the family, but his marriage with my mother was increasingly difficult. And so, as I mentioned in the last broadcast, usually on the weekends there would be a fight, and she would yell and scream to get out. And of course, he already knew he was going to be leaving and evidently had a place. We never did find out where he went to. And he had a place that he would go to for the weekends and usually come home Monday after his insurance job. But as I mentioned in the last broadcast, he did not. So for years, my dad was out of the picture. My brother enlisted in the Air Force. And so he was technically out of the picture. So it was my sister and myself. Now, my mother got hooked up with a variety of doctors that would prescribe her medications that were uppers and downers, basically. It was a drug medication that it would pick her up. It was a stimulant. And she could be up 10, 12 hours, 14 hours straight. And when mom was up, everybody was up. And it didn't matter what time it was. Now, I'm in the fourth grade when I began to see and recognize what was going on. And I was attending a Christian school, Midwestern Christian Academy in Chicago, Illinois. Now, I don't remember kindergarten through third grade. I do remember fourth grade at this Christian school. But I also remember being disturbed in the middle of the night when people should be sleeping. And my mother would misplace her medication. And she would become irate. She would become angry. She would become abusive. Everybody had to get up. My sister and I had to give it up. And we had to go look for her medication. We had to search, where did she put it? Because oftentimes she would hide her medication. Eventually, this led to her suicide. So she would hide her medication and she would forget where she put it. And so my sister Linda and I were rousted out of bed, and we are searching the house, in particular her bedroom, where she might have hidden her medication. And it was not unusual for her to go ahead and, when she was in this upper state, very energetic, and we needed to start cleaning the house. This could be at 2 o'clock in the morning, but we were up cleaning the house. Um, One chore that I despised, and it was generally on a Saturday. My mother would get out the silverware, and actually, it was silverware. It wasn't coated. And as a young boy, I would have to polish the silverware. And this took hours upon hours because rarely was she satisfied with what I had done. So her dealing with life was either to uh, try to inflict others with her pain and her sorrow, or to sleep it away and be unconscious from her role as a mother. One summer in particular, Dad still kept in contact with the family using a post office box at a place called Merchandise Mart on downtown Chicago, Wacker Avenue, and under the elevated train. It was a huge building. It had uh, little stores on the main floor, but there was also a very large post office there, and evidently he had rented a box and every once in a while would put money in the mailbox. Well, because my mother was in no condition to do much of anything, I was designated most every day during the summer to take the elevated train to, excuse me, Merchandise Mart and go to the post office, having memorized the combination. And sometimes there was an envelope in there. Sometimes there was nothing in there. Sometimes there was junk mail. And so I would get back on the elevated train, return home, and give my mother whatever was in the box, or to let her know that there wasn't anything in the box. She began to go through doctors who began to recognize that she was addicted to these drugs. But somehow she was always able to be persuasive to get a new doctor to provide to write new scripts for her to continue her drug addiction. It got so bad that she began being paranoid. Everybody was against her, including Linda and myself, my sister and myself. We were against her. We were plotting against her. And the one apartment that we lived in Chicago was up on the second floor, and it overlooked a postage size backyard, and it had a double garage. This was on Montana Street. And in the double garage, it had the brick support on the outside. And I can remember being out there for hours upon hours when I could escape, because my mother always had something for me to do, some type of cleaning. I became the person who did the majority of the shopping, the majority of the shopping. And I will remember pretending to be a pitcher in for the Chicago Cubs. That was my team, and that middle brick support was the strike zone, and it was very enjoyable. Just me and that rubber ball and my mitt. She became so paranoid that one day I went to school, and when I came home, the back door was locked, and she was not answering the front door, which indicated to me that she was out of it, unconscious somewhere. So I went up to the second floor. The back door was locked. But on this back porch, there was these huge um, screen windows, almost like a plate glass window, but they were screened in frames. And I can remember oftentimes thinking to myself that I needed to leave one of those unlocked just in case she uh, would not let me back in or that she was unconscious. And so this was the day. But the tricky part is that I had to climb up on the second floor railing overlooking this postage stamp backyard, push open this large screen frame, and grab a hold of it and swing myself around and jump in to the back porch area. So I was able to do that successfully. And as I walked in, the house was quiet. Uh, the kitchen had been cleaned up before I went to the bedroom. What I found um, shook me. Um, I found my mother lying on the floor, naked, with blood all over the place. And being in the fourth grade, I I couldn't fathom what was going on. I guess my initial thought was that uh, she's dead. So my instinct was to call her mother, Grandma Lyle. So I called Grandma Lyle, Verdi Lyle, and I said, "Hey, mom's on the floor and she's all covered in blood. And what should I do?" I'm not quite sure how things worked out about who came over and whether it was the paramedics or the police or whatever. But what I remember is two things. She broke her jaw. That's where all the blood came from. She broke her jaw, and her jaw would be wired for, I can't remember, 6, 8 weeks. And I can remember at least once a day, if not twice, walking down to Walgreens on the corner and getting her a shake, and also trying to cook her scrambled eggs. I became somewhat of a um, sloppy chef, if you please, just doing the basics. And she would take a look at it, and I don't want it. Go cook me another egg. I don't like this shake. Go down and get me another shake. And the second thing I remember is when she found out who got involved to help her and what her condition was, namely her mother. And she found out that I made the phone call because Linda was at work. She got out her leather buckle belt and she began to tar and feather me. Uh, and this was her way of handling things. This was her main way of expressing her anger. And then the third thing that I can remember is oftentimes she would want me to come and lay in bed with her, and she would listen to some old time music. She was into Frank Sinatra like you wouldn't believe. Uh, but I distinctly remember uh, being woken up and she was trying to molest me. So as a fourth grader, I experienced this. I don't think it ever dominated me to where I got seared in my conscience about it. Frankly, I don't even remember if I processed that event. Some would say, "Well, you imagined it." No, I was there. I did not imagine all of this upbringing in my life. And so I'll close again with the reminder, whatever your background is, whatever difficulties that you have had, whatever difficulties you are having, you do not have to be a product of your environment. You need to look for God in your life. You need to see how He is protecting you and guiding you. You might say, well, Rick, if He was protecting you, why did He allow these things to happen? Because they became part of the foundation and building blocks of my life and for my ministry. That's why. We'll see you next time.